In the world of GTA Online, what do you think constitutes a good aircraft design? I want you to think about it for a second. Is it having the ability to PvP well? What about being useful in missions? Or perhaps it's all about, There's no real wrong answer to that question, but I think it goes a lot deeper than what's good on paper and what's not. Let me present the B-11 Strike Force, arguably the best dogfighter in the game. It's so good that I feel bad simply for using it. And yet, when it was released, it was a pretty big letdown. And the reason for that is pretty simple. The B-11's design is based off the A-10 Warthog, the plane built with the sole purpose of strafing and annihilating ground targets, which it does very well. But as we all know, the B-11 did not inherit these qualities. They took the template of a ground attack vehicle and made an aircraft that people would rather use to dogfight than to actually attack ground targets with. The A-10's skill set simply does not reflect on the B-11 at all, which is a problem that a lot of people have with it. A well-designed vehicle should reflect their real-life counterparts, but like a carnival mirror reflection. This is still GTA after all. Take all the characteristics that might fit into the sandbox and turn them into gameplay elements that make each aircraft a unique experience. Not only is it paying homage to the inspiration aircraft, it creates incentive for people to try out every single aircraft because each aircraft is a completely different experience from the last, which is something that Rockstar absolutely nailed with Smuggler's Run. They prioritized adding lesser known aircraft with unique quirks and characteristics that they could shine a light on. And as a result, these otherwise unknown aircraft each have their own cult following of people who absolutely fucking love them. You've got the rat rocket enthusiasts, the hipsters, the water boys, the Rhodesian nationalists, and the gods among men. But there's one Smuggler's Run aircraft that is in fact pretty well known. And unlike the B-11, it's faithful to the aircraft that it's inspired by. That aircraft is the P-45 Nokota, which is based off the P-51 Mustang, also known as the second greatest World War II aircraft of all time. The first one being the Spitfire, obviously. I fucking love the Spitfire. But that's the beauty of the Nokota. It may be shaped like a P-51 Mustang, but it's got a costume for every World War II occasion. You want to be a Spitfire? Boom! Spitfire livery. Feeling evil? Boom! Luftwaffe! This is part of the reason why the Nokota is so fucking awesome. Rockstar genuinely went above and beyond giving it different World War II aircraft liveries that you can pretty much realistically pass off the Nokotas whatever you want it to be. Assuming there's a livery for it anyway, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But as far as I'm aware, no other aircraft comes anywhere close to the level of representation that the Nokota gives. And that's not even mentioning performance characteristics because Rockstar did a fantastic job on those as well. It's not perfect, but there's a surprising amount of detail on stuff like weaponry and flight performance that makes the Nokota feel authentic to its roots. Both its missiles and its guns are fired in a completely unique manner that draws direct inspiration from the P-51 Mustang. And its flight model is exactly what you'd expect from a Mustang. Decent high altitude performance with an unmatched dive speed that allows you to be a fucking hit and run weasel. And outside of that, in the cases where there is something inaccurate with the Nokota, it's not like the B-11 where it's losing something that it should have had. Usually the Nokota gets something extra that it realistically shouldn't have. Like heat seekers on a World War II plane, or countermeasures, or a fucking speed glitch. Which I'll get into, but before I hype the Nokota up too much, I'm gonna be straight up honest with you guys because I don't want to accidentally mislead anybody. The Nokota is kinda mid. Don't get me wrong, it's an awesome aircraft, and there's a lot of neat and fun things about it that I really want to talk about, but if you were looking for a good aircraft to PvP in, the Nokota should not be your pick. There are just so many better choices available. That doesn't mean the Nokota is horrible, and you absolutely can have success with the Nokota, but it won't come as easy as a lot of other aircraft, and you need to have an understanding of what you can and can't get away with. Which is kind of what the aim of this video is, because if you still want to use the Nokota after what I just said, you're pretty badass, and I want you to win, so I'm going to do my best to set you up for success out there. And with several thousand hours weaseling around in shitboxes under my belt, I feel pretty qualified to be able to do that. To make this easier, I'm going to divide this video up into two parts. Part 1, customization and the basics. Self-explanatory. Part 2 will be everything you need to know about not only surviving in the Nokota, but also thriving. But anyway, let's dive into it. Oh shit, wrong game. So just to go over customizing it real quick, max out all the stats obviously. You can go for drop tanks if you want, they look pretty cool. But that being said, they add extra collision to your hitbox, making you slightly easier to hit. So if that's a concern, don't use them. You also want chaff countermeasures. If you don't know what chaff does, it gives you a 5-second window where you cannot be locked onto, which is pretty useful against missile slingers. Alternatively, you could run flares, but my professional opinion is that chaff is more useful and reliable. Moving on. Pay close attention because this is the most important part of the video. Let's talk about drip. The livery list is fucking stacked with bangers, so I'm going to talk about each one a little bit and go over how I've customized it and what aircraft they're inspired by. Keep in mind that with Rockstar, they're never exactly one-to-one, and on some of them there's bits and pieces from many different aircraft. So if your interpretation is different than mine, I'd love to hear it. So first up, we've got God Save the King, which is very clearly a Spitfire with invasion stripes. Crab Air is another British aircraft, which I believe is the Hurricane, but it could also be another Spitfire. Tin Pickle Hunter is some sort of Pacific Theater aircraft. I'm leaning towards either the Corsair or maybe the Bearcat. The nose art is definitely from a P-40 though. Cupid's Itch is your classic P-51 Mustang, not much else to say about it. Hangar Warrior is also another P-51 Mustang, and I believe this one is inspired by the Red Tails, which is pretty fucking baller. Pecker Checker is another P-51 Mustang inspired by Mustangs with the checker tails. Dirty Gertie is one of my favorites. I'm fairly certain that this is a P-47 Thunderbolt, though an argument could be made that it's just another P-51, but I'm a firm believer in Jug Supremacy. Rootin' Tootin' is a bit strange because it seems like it's primarily based off the BF-109, though I don't know why it has Allied invasion stripes. Shrapnel Catcher is an interesting one. It's another P-51 livery, but this one is inspired from the color scheme of captured P-51s that Germany got their hands on and repainted for their own needs. So this is an evil Mustang. And last but not least, we have the Desert Rat. This is the most debatable one. I believe it's inspired from the Flying Tiger P-40s because the nose art and the general color scheme, but a very strong argument could be made for various Italian aircraft as well. But yeah, there's a lot of potential for some very nice customization. You can't really go wrong with any of these. Now for weapons, this is going to sound a bit weird, but they are both unique and not unique at the same time. The Nokota has the standard machine guns that most smugglers' aircraft get, but instead of firing from 2 places like most planes, they fire from 4, which is funny because the Nokota has 6 barrels just like the P-51, but only 4 of them are actually functional. I know what you're thinking, and no, they still do the same amount of damage as other machine guns because each barrel alternates shots. And honestly, I'm not totally sure how I feel about that. I've had people tell me it makes precise shooting easier because you're aiming with 2 streams of bullets instead of 1, but I haven't really had that experience. So worst case scenario, it's slightly harder to hit stuff at the cost of looking cool as shit with those extra guns, but at the end of the day, they're still just as effective against vehicles. The missiles on the Nokota aren't any different than what we've seen on other vehicles, but once again, the way they're deployed from the Nokota is unique. In other aircraft, one missile will be fired from one wing, and the next will be fired from the alternate wing, then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The Nokota does not do that. It fires 3 missiles in a row from one wing before switching to the next wing, which I freaking love because it's clearly inspired from the triple bazooka pods that the P-51s would stow under their wings to strafe tanks with. So not only is it historically accurate, It also just makes strafing ground targets easier since you can just dump all 3 missiles without worrying about missing because they fired from the wrong wing. The missile lock-on range is 300 meters with absolutely dog shit tracking, but it is standard for planes in general. Regardless, I'm not going to complain because I don't think the World War II fighters should be having heat seekers, but that's just me. They're also spammable, which is a massive bonus, especially if you're doing anything PvE related. Though I will say, without the missile pods, the Nokota is drippy as hell. And I mean, look at that. Not only is it fly as fuck, it's historically accurate. We on that gunslinger shit. And last but not least, the Nokota has one more weapon in its arsenal, the humble propeller, your built-in, lean, mean, wood-chipping machine. I have spent an obscene amount of time in propeller planes. The wood chipper has never let me down, and the Nokota is a pretty solid pick for it too. I don't think I need to explain how to feed people into the blender, it just happens. The Mark IIs, they yearn for it. But anyway, speed. So at low altitude, the Nokota ain't really the fastest in terms of top speed. It's actually in between the laser and the sea breeze for top speed on the deck. Faster than the sea breeze, slower than the laser. Which ain't that bad, but it's pretty slow in comparison to some other vehicles. Above 1 bar, it's a bit faster, being behind the Molotov in speed. But that's not what makes the Nokota special, because once you get really high up, the fun begins. The Nokota and the Sea Breeze have the fastest dive speed in the entire game, which I fully believe is a trait they took specifically from the P-51 because it was known for its incredible dive speed and speed retention, which you can take full advantage of in the Nokota. I don't know why the fuck the Sea Breeze has it, but I'm not going to complain. You can also take this a step further because when the Nokota is spawned specifically from your hangar, it does not lose that speed when you pull out of a dive, as long as you stay above 1 bar of altitude. This is technically a speed glitch, and there's nothing in the game outside of other speed glitches that are faster. But for the most part, when you're doing it, you don't really gauge how fast you actually are until you watch it from someone else's perspective. You're going blink and you'll miss at speed. In fact, you go so fast that you can dodge the orbital cannon consistently. But I'll go over all of that a little bit later in detail. The Nokota's armor is nothing crazy. It's pretty much identical to other Smugglers Run aircraft. It blows up in 3 homing, 3 explosive rounds, 2 railgun shots, and 1 RPG round. It's also worth mentioning that like most other aircraft, an explosive hit to the tail will disable both its elevator and rudder controls. The way you avoid missiles in the Nokota is pretty much the same as other aircraft. You just roll to the side and turn in the circle. Be careful gaining altitude while doing this because I find it a lot less forgiving than some other aircraft. And if you're a decent distance from the person firing the missiles, you can also do what's known as an S-turn where you fly straight while holding the rudder and simply outrun the missiles. So for agility, I won't lie, it's kinda shit. In comparison with the top 10 PvP aircraft, the Nokota ranks number 8 for maneuverability, which is a big problem, and I want you to pay attention to how I've grouped them. The groups represent aircraft that are comparatively close to each other in maneuverability, with these gaps representing a large drop in that maneuverability for the next group. This is important because on paper, the Pyro and the Sea Breeze may be number 4 and 5, but in reality, the Pyro is closer to number 1 than the Sea Breeze is to the Pyro, hence the gaps. Now for the Nokota, being below the second gap means that pretty much everything you come across in free mode will be able to effortlessly outturn you if they have even a rough idea of what they're doing. Which is a big fucking problem. And a large part of flying the Nokota is working to get around this in any way that you can. So if you want to get by, you have to be crafty and know how to squeeze as much performance as you can out of the Nokota. Which I'll go into because that's the basics done, let's get into surviving and thriving. It's an unforgiving world out there, especially when you're in a shitbox. To understand how to fly the Nokota, you also must understand the P-51. Just like the Mustang, high altitude is your kingdom, and speed is your best friend. These are the pillars that you can lean on to help keep you alive, as well as a major component to the Nokota's playstyle. That said, if you're just chilling, you don't really have to worry about it too much, but if you're in an active situation, I recommend sticking to at least 2 to 3 bars of altitude because you might need it. Shit hits the fan, dive for speed, and get out of there. See a fight you're not going to win? Just keep going. They're not going to catch you. That's the power of the Nokota with altitude and speed on its side. Anything you don't like? Just swipe left, dude. What the fuck are they going to do about it? Then on the flip side of that, it also means that you also have the speed to run down pretty much anything that you want. Even if they drop below 1 bar of altitude, just stay high, utilize high altitude bonus speed to close the distance, and then dive on them when you get close enough. It's actually so funny watching Raiju shit their pants when they realize that you're actually catching up to them. They've all been deceived into thinking that they're the fastest aircraft around. Show them the error of their ways. Next thing to understand is how you spawn the Nokota matters. If you spawn it from your hangar or the Mackenzie airfield, you'll be able to maintain your dive speed. But if you spawn it from the interaction menu, you'll lose that speed shortly after. So it's pretty important to have the hangar spawn Nokota whenever possible. Also, when you're going really fast, the Nokota has a tendency to pitch its nose upwards, which pisses me off because it makes the Nokota annoying to keep straight and level flight, which is important because you will drain speed if you accidentally start climbing too much. Naturally, you could fight this by pulling down on the stick a little bit, but that's not really sustainable if you're trying to hold it for a very long time. But like the genius I am, it took me about a month to realize I could just flip it upside down occasionally and it would solve itself. You could also just roll to the side and let that turn you. That's the other option. I found that the fastest way you could judge your speed quickly is by firing a missile and seeing how fast you are compared to it. If it's off your screen in less than a second, you're golden. Now, to address the elephant in the room, yeah, when you're going these speeds, you are so fast that you can dodge orbital cannon rounds. You're quite literally going faster than Rockstar thought possible, so the orbital's projectile isn't fast enough to reach you before you're gone, so it ends up landing behind you. And as of the time of making this video, they don't get that money back. Which is fucking hilarious, because if trying to orb a Nokota isn't shameful enough, they get to watch their 750k disappear like a fart in the wind while we all point and laugh. And the only aircraft that can do this are the Nokota, Seabreeze, and the Hydra with a separate speed glitch. It's so funny to me that this high-tech, futuristic space-age satellite weapon gets hard countered by an 80-year-old warbird in a civilian seaplane. It is truly a power that only the silliest of fellers were meant to unlock. Just don't tell the cops you heard it from me when you end up getting pulled over for breaking the laws of physics, man. But yeah, just to recap before I move on, make sure you spawn your Nokota from inside your hangar, go high, dive to gain speed, don't drop below 1 bar of altitude or you'll lose it. Alright, dogfighting. We gotta talk about it because it's pretty much unavoidable. The Nokota may have the zoom of boom and zoom, but it does not have the boom. So naturally, if you want to shoot shit down, you're gonna have to get in there and get your hands dirty. Which is a tall order considering pretty much everything under the sun can outturn you in a straight dogfight. So you're gonna have to do what you can to push every little bit of performance out of the Nokota. Now, before I get into that, I still want you to remember, you've got the zoomies, you get to pick and choose your dogfights. Now with that in mind, let's dive into the Nokota's speed control. If you don't know what speed control is, it's basically braking and throttle techniques meant to maximize your turning potential in a dogfight. Speed control is the backbone of all competitive dogfighting, and a good chunk of it is literally just fighting gravity. But even with basic speed control, you'll be able to win most dogfights against average free mode randoms, even if they're in a better aircraft. It's pretty simple. So for vertical turns, imagine a full loop like a clock. Start full throttling right before 6 o'clock at about 5:45. Hold it all the way to 1 o'clock, and then brake all the way back down to 5:45 and then start again. For horizontals, it really varies from situation to situation, but generally throttle about 20% less at higher altitudes than you would at low altitude. Next on the list is stalling. It's a very common move in dogfights, and for good reason because of how effective it can be. It's one of my favorite moves against more agile aircraft due to its ability to quickly put you on someone's 6. But before I hype it up too much, I want to be very clear. This is one of those things that should only be used as a last resort option while in a losing situation. It shouldn't come as a shock that purposely stalling yourself in free mode is one of the easiest ways to get yourself killed if you don't do it correctly. But despite the name, stalling is not the goal here. The goal is to force an overshoot and put you on their 6. Any way you can achieve that is a win. The less risk, the better. kind of a hard thing to teach, but the key is reading your opponent's movements, and there's two main things that I try to look out for. First, they need to be close enough to you that they won't have time to react to what you're doing. And second, your opponent needs to be significantly faster than you so that they overshoot. Failure to account for either of these will end the dogfight faster than shit through a goose. Obviously, there's a bit more room for error against MG planes, but stalling against explosive MG planes will always have that inherent danger. Alternatively, you could also stall behind tall buildings as a way to mitigate some of that risk. But at the end of the day, stalling is a very useful tool, but pick and choose your moments very carefully. And lastly, don't stall on Raijus. I think you know why. Another more niche strategy I've used against better turning aircraft is what I like to call ring around the rosy. The gist of it is you find a wide building or an obstacle to turn around, which acts like an artificial barrier preventing them from using 100% of their turning ability. So now you're both turning at roughly the same pace around the building. It's just a matter of speeding up and catching up behind them. I've had great success using this against B11s and Starlings. It's tricky against Pyros and Raijus because they have the speed to go around the building faster than you can. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do in a direct dogfight when you find yourself outmatched. Like I said earlier, stay high, stay fast, wait for opportunities, and pick apart your opponent with hit and runs, just how the P-51 would in real life. And man, all I'm saying is, if you have a friend in the Nokota with you, you can get real creative with your strategies. You know what? Fuck it. Good enough. Welcome back, Backweave. And remember, shooting down Starlings is not only funny, it's also historically accurate. Do us all proud, Ace. Let's move on to air to ground. For attacking ground targets, free aim missiles are naturally the way to go, and there's two different ways you can generally go about it. The first one is lining up with them on the map, getting nice and close and then firing one or two rockets once you manage to spot them. Generally, this will yield the best results. The second option is getting above them, get a rough location where they are by reading the map, and then absolutely let loose and start dumping rockets in the general area and hope that you score a hit. Each of them have their time and place. Just be careful when you're doing strafes because maneuverability does play a factor in being able to safely pull out of a dive, and as we all know, the Nokota is lacking in that department. And lastly, I want to remind you all that since the Nokota is a propeller aircraft, it benefits from the increased awareness that comes with not having a giant jet strapped to your plane. This allows anyone in the Nokota to pretty easily hear any nearby jets, whether they're on the radar or off the radar. It doesn't really matter. You could also take this a step further by completely turning off your engine to hear even better. For whatever reason, the Nokota is just really good at gliding without engine power, so you can turn that shit off pretty much whenever you want. It's actually really useful if you lose your engine mid-combat because you can use that to glide yourself back to base without actually jumping out of the plane. But in conclusion, despite the challenges that come along with it, flying the Nokota is an absolute blast. It might not be competitive, but not everything has to be. It's got heart, and sometimes that's all you need. Thanks for watching. Take care, guys.